and Dr. Ranjit P.S., Assistant Professor Gift. And the discussion will be initiated by Dr. Justin George, Assistant Professor, St. Paul College, Kalamasheri. I now request respected chair to take over the and lead the rest of the session. Thank you.
Good afternoon, friends. All of you gathered here. We have had a very fascinating discussion in the morning, a good elaboration of the state of the economy in Kerala and the challenges it faces, mainly on the financial front, but in various sectors, all ably illustrated by the a group of good speakers who came on the forum. And now we are moving to the next session, fiscal challenges and budget management. Again, linked to that, but we are going to spend more time talking about the striking achievements Kerala has had in the past, the drawbacks, the setbacks, the shortcomings in the way we traversed this distance, the challenges before the Kerala society, how we are going to deal with them, and a roadmap for the future, again addressed from different angles by a very distinguished panel of speakers, including a public intellectual we have, Sri C.P. John. Therefore, what I'm going to do is to request the speakers to come and make a presentation, let me say, for a maximum of 15 minutes. And one of the commentators we have, discussants, he will speak for 10 minutes. And the remaining time we'll set aside for questions from the floor, which we hope to spend a good amount of time, especially with participation of the students gathered here. So I'm not going to elaborate about the subject. That's not much I can talk about it either. So let me invite Sri C.P. John to come and speak. Thank you.
Respected Chair, Dr. A.V. Jose, Professor K.J. Joseph, Pinaki Chakrabarti, Professor Pinaki Chakrabarti, Sri R. Mohanan, he's not present, I think, Sri Siddiq Rabiat, Dr. Ranjit, and the discussants, Emmanuel Thomas and Justin George. Without any pleasantries, I directly tread into the subject. See, most of you know that Kerala government or Kerala finance has been struggling hard to make the two ends meet. Today morning, Finance Minister elaborated the difficulties in detail. The problem often the Kerala government has been pointing out is the percentage of central transfer has been decreasing steadily. And it is the primary reason for finding everything very difficult in fiscal management. So, what to do? That's my small presentation. As you know, how the divisive pool is assessed or divided according to the states. It's very clear that a method of distance from the higher income states and the distance from the low income states are taken into account. And often in the last 10-15 years, since our per capita income has been increased, it is a success. We are becoming the prey of the success or victim of the success. So it is very difficult to change that formula. In that scenario, we have to find our own methods. Why this formula is illogical according to the Finance Commission? They rightly say that if you have per capita income, more per capita income, it simply means that you have higher potential to have your own taxes. So the argument is very simple. The states with higher per capita income should try for more state states own tax revenue or SOTR. That's the logic. Now we shall look into the figures. I read. Last year, the revised estimate says that we have only 81,627,000 crores. And the budget estimate of that year was 84,800 something. But in the accounts, when you look at the accounts of 23-24, it was 74,329, meaning there is a small increase in the SOTR or states on tax revenue. The question is it enough or is it logical? In the sense that you can see that the increase is only around 6,000 crores. When you adjust the amount with the inflation rate, practically there is no increase. The increase is near zero. Then we are expecting 91,554 crores this year. This is our budget estimate. So the question is, what is the potential of our SOTR? In my guesstimation, it is not an estimation since I am not an economist. My guesstimation is that we can have at least 1.25 lakh crores as SOTR currently. Then the second question comes how? By increasing the rate of taxes, can you reach this figure? Most often, it is not possible. Then what is the problem? Dr. Kannan is sitting in front of me. People like him had done or has been doing very serious professional researches and studies regarding our potential. And what are the problems with the figure? I mean, the quantity of money. Mainly, Kerala's percentage of imported goods from other states is rather 80%. 80% goods we are consuming are coming from other states. Then comes the problem of IGST. So, what is the composition of, what is the ratio of our states SGST and IGST? I came to know from gift, like from persons like Anita Kumari, it is only 1 is to 1.2, meaning if we collect 1 rupee, As our GST, SGST, we are getting only 1.2 rupees as the IGST. So there is a big gap. If the 80% is the real quantity of goods coming in, we have to have at least, the ratio must be at least 1 is to 2.4 or 2.2. That is the critical gap that we are having. So how to combat that problem, how to address that problem? It's a very complex thing, but political leader, there the political leadership, the role of the political leadership comes. The political leadership, through its discussions with national leadership in the national GST council type of things at all, they have to negotiate with the center and they have to convince them that we have a big potential, but IGST is not being coming. So, what are the solutions for that? The main solution is the evasion of IGST. I mean, the problem is evasion of IGST. How we can resolve the problem of this IGST evasion? I have heard that it is only a hearsay. There are some lobbies in other states. I'm not naming any state which will operate in such a way that IGST documents are proper in inverted comma. So we are depending only on that data, meaning that records. We have no proper data regarding that. In this situation, I request institutions like GIFT to come forward and do very intensive research in the tax evasion scenario as far as IGST is concerned. And the second solution is we can tell the central government, it is not possible, I know, that you have to collect this IGST and you have to divide it. Then the whole GST framework will fall down in the sense that GST is not meant for that. And the third thing is we have no check, what do you call check post now, physical check posts. But even without physical check posts, now the vehicles have a very advanced number plates. If you look at the number plate, meaning through a camera, particular method, you can understand that this vehicle is coming from this source. And this vehicle is having this much quantity of X or Y. But as far as our state is concerned, that cameras are not functioning to my knowledge. We are more bothered about the seat belts and the helmets. Of course, these are very important. But so technology, using the technology, even in the absence of the check posts, we have to scrutinize the quantity of things as well as the quality of things pouring into our market. So by getting the proper IGST, not the IGST compensation, the IGST per se, we can increase our SOTR considerably. And the second thing is our non-tax revenue. There's a limit for increasing non-tax revenue. I'm not suggesting a huge enhancement of non-tax revenue to enhance our SOTR or our total taxes. So I'm concluding my speech saying that last point is Harilal, welcome. The last point is again it is concerned about the research institutions like GIFT. We have no proper commodity-wise tax data. The commodity-wise tax data will tell you what kind of goods are coming in. The experts are telling me that less than 5,000 merchants or traders are contributing 80% of taxes. So in a way, it is very easy to look at it. But we think that it is a very complex mechanism. No. If you have will, you can scrutinize the trade and the products, commodities coming in, and we can enhance our tax base. And last but not the least point is we have to have resources other than the selling and buying or the shopkeeping. For example, we have now the Vizhinjam port. Vizhinjam port has enhanced our income. We have our airports, especially Sial. That kind of development activities or that kind of advancements in infrastructure and ports and so many other things should come. New venue avenues should come. You should not, you cannot milk this cow for having this much big tax. So we have to have a development program, development agenda according to the availability of the taxes. And we have to look at the development in such a way that the enhancement of tax is an important issue. And for example, this IT industry has come, but our tax benefit is rather low to my knowledge. Am I right? We are concentrating on IT sector, but we can't tax the IT sector. But we are spending, we have spent a lot of money for IT parks and so many other things. So it is not a sin. We have to have IT parks, and the people who are working in the IT parks are spending the money. It's a complex thing. But when we spend more money, we have to see that it will be beneficial for the state finances as in the like enhancement of taxation. So I am concluding my speech. I think I am within the prescribed time. Very much. Thank you very much.
I was supposedly having a PowerPoint somewhere. Is it? You are going to open it? Okay, yeah, right. Yeah. I think good evening, respected chairperson and fellow speakers. Um, Being an organizer and speaker is a very difficult job. Uh, in fact, I completely agree with what Sri C.P. John said. He always makes a lot of sense. In fact, whenever we listen to him, it's always a lot to learn from him. And in which he started with the center-state financial relations in which the subnational entities are operating. And he specifically talked to us, our finance minister rightly said, the GST initiative has been one that made the states to be in front of the union with the begging bowls. There was already their financial powers been declining, and this is in fact the last nail. And the way in which it has been conceived that a destination-based tax should be of beneficial to a consumption-oriented state like Kerala, which is the great expectations that we implemented. But our experience says that there has been a big slip between the cup and the lip, for which we are paying now. So, John, sir, I think I must say that we have some, unfortunately today, GST data is not a public property. You know that earlier, all the data were not public. No data was, I don't know when I was doing postdoc, one person almost spent 1 year to get NSSO data from Praveen Bisaria was the chair at that time. But now, and he could not get the data, he worked with the Chinese data. And today, all the other data is free. We are living in a world of high frequency data. All data is free, but GST data is not. In fact, 2 weeks ago, in fact, I was very appreciative. I was really like when Sri Jyotilal wrote to the Revenue Secretary, we want to know on what basis are you paying this much money. We give us the data. He wrote a very strong letter. He told me he might not have liked it, but I wrote it. That writing is very important. And very one for 2018, 19, and 1920, we have data, e-waybill data, very partial data. We analyzed. We found that, see, we have got different slabs: zero rate, 0.25%, 3%, 5%, 12%, 18%, 28%. And you cannot have any commodities other than these rates. Forget about the anomalies. In zero rates, there are certain HSN commodities which should be only eligible for that. We put those commodities, then we also added other exempted imports, like, say, for example, suppose you are supplying to provide a warranty, repair, stock transfer. We adjust. There are seven possible way to get it through import, through zero. We adjusted all that. Then we found that there is something like, out of 101.6 lakh crore, something like 2.4% of that is coming as unauthorized zero rated. And the total tax revenue lost on that 2 years is something like 430 crores, something like that, on this item alone. So we need to kind of more work. We are very much with you, sir. We will be undertaking that. Now, what I am going to say all about state data, I don't think that anyone could say better than what my honorable chairperson said in the morning, to be very frank enough. I cannot add anything to that. The manner in which he talked, as if വീട്ടിലെ കണക്ക് പറയുന്ന പോലെ പുള്ളി പറഞ്ഞ കാര്യങ്ങൾ ഓരോന്നും. ഇനിയിപ്പോൾ അതിൻ്റെ മുകളിൽ എന്തോട്ട് പറയാനാണ്? അപ്പം ഞാൻ ആലോചിച്ചത്, what I will try to think is that we are actually thinking, we already talked about the challenging situation, the context that we are confronted with. This challenging context is very much, some of them is externally driven. That is what Honorable Minister wanted us to organize a meeting next week. We were actually planning about that. That has been now postponed. That we postponed at that time. Trump postponed to 3 months. We also postponed. Now we have to do it next week. There are internal challenges again. Now I'm just going to take a particular case about Kerala alone. What I'm trying to argue is that what you are is quintessentially contingent on what you are doing. Your fiscal health is quintessentially contingent on what actually you are doing. If you are, that means your economic characteristics, the product the product structure of an economy, what do you produce, actually shapes the in a fiscal federal context, the fiscal health or the economic well-being of the different actors in the fiscal federal system. It is not working. Who else I will say this thing? Hey. Yeah. Oh, you are here. Okay. So what we are talking about a systemic way. We are talking about a fiscal federal system. First, we should not forget that fiscal federal relations in India started with a congenital inequality. Janmana buddhivaigilem ennu parnal janmana inequality തുടങ്ങിയതാണ്. The manner in which the responsibilities are distributed among states and the revenue entitlements are distributed. As per the constitution, there are different list and all. So what actually happens is that out of this, in this country, the total expenditure, in the total country's expenditure, 62% is borne by the states expenditure. But they have the entitlement, according to 15th Finance Commission, only 37% of the revenue. So that means with the 37%, if you want to spend 62% of the expenditure, the finance minister either will have to beg, will have to borrow, or steal. You cannot beg anyway, of course. Or you cannot steal. Only possibility is borrowing. But when it comes to borrowing, we have a particular public finance which we follow in terms of Fiscal Responsible Budget Management Act, which I would like to say that if anybody knows economics, this kind of a budgetary management act will not be implemented to a developing economy like India. Why? As early as in 1956, Richard Nelson has taught us that a country's low-level equilibrium trap. A country is poor because your income is poor. Your income is poor, your investment is poor. Your investment is low because your saving is low. Your saving is low because your income is low. Your money is not enough for eating. Then why would you save? So if my saving is low, I should take from somebody else's saving. That is called investment, borrowing. But what actually happens here is that you are told that don't borrow more than 3.5% of your GDP. I can understand for a developed economy, it is okay. But as far as a developing economy, what we need is fiscal responsibility, not budget management. What you need is fiscal responsibility and borrowing utilization act. You can borrow. You must borrow in a developing economy. But please ensure that every rupee that you borrow is giving a return higher than the rate of interest. I don't know. Do you need another Kautilya to teach this to the policymakers in a developing economic context? You are emulating what Scandinavians should do. They have all the capital, all the initial conditions are made there. Our roads are made, hospitals are made. So this kind of thing, this we cannot borrow. In this context, I am actually asking, what kind of how do we articulate the fiscal health of an economy? So what I basic premise is that you are quintessentially contingent on the characteristics of our economy. So in a fiscal federal system, we have got three following actors: one, the union; second, the state; the people of the particular state; and other states. This is the system. So in every action, say for example, when you take the states, we can divide them into two types. Type 1 state are the states for various reasons. I don't want to get historical and other reasons and endowment reasons. They specialize in the production of goods. Goods, by their very nature, are, of course, consumable. They are tradable. Goods are tradable. And they specialize in tradables, that is goods. The moment you engage in the production of goods, you generate employment. That means people of that states are very happy. Type 1 states. And these goods, when they produce, they are taxable. The state government is happy. Okay. Now, then comes, where is the, oh, yeah. Okay. Now, so you produce goods, the people are happy because it creates some income and employment opportunities. The state government is happy because they get taxes. Union government is happy because union government also get taxes. And other states are also happy because the goods which is produced by a particular state can be used by the people elsewhere, because we use Maharashtra's machinery, so we create employment, whatever it is. Now there is a type 2 states, that means in this context, all the actors are happy in that. All the actors in the fiscal solar system are happy in the first, the type 1 states nature of activities. Let's take the type 2 states. Type 2 states by nature are producing non-tradables. Non-tradables like human capital. Human capital is not saleable. They are mobile. Some of them go to other states. Some of them, of course, stay back. Some of them fly away. This is now, many of them are trying to fly away. So for those who are flying away, what will happen? They will make their remittance to the domestic economy. When these state, migrants, when you migrate, when you go to other states, some of them may go to other states are happy because instead of creating your own human capital, you are getting human capital created by elsewhere. So they are happy. And some of them go to other countries, they are happy over there. Other countries are also happy. And these people will be sending remittance back to the economy. When the remittance come, the family in Kerala, there is not in a single house wherein no remittance money is there. No family. Every family gets benefited. And the union is also happy because today in this country, out of 125 billion US dollar, 27% of the remittance is made by Keralites. 2.7% of the population bringing 27% of the remittance. That means union government's kitty is happy. Now, union government's foreign exchange situation is saved. So, in the second type of states, what will happen? People are happy because you get remittance income here. Big houses. Ultimately, as my dear friend Rajan says, 4,000 square feet house, an old lady and a dog. That is the thing. So people are happy. Then comes the other states. They are happy, free human capital. Central government is happy. What about state government? They have invested heavily in the creation of human capital, but they flew away and state government directly didn't get anything. Instead of producing 50 nurses, if you are producing 50 metric tons of steel, you would now go taxes directly. You are not getting anything. Of course, naturally, they will now. Somebody may ask the question. Of course, these people are bringing money here. Are they not spending that money, and tax will be coming? That is very different from the. This is the derived effect. When the money comes here, this 27% is coming here. Then they will decide where to spend, how to spend, when to spend according to their consumption decisions. According to that only part of that will be consumed, that may be saved, that will go into the bank, that that credit deposit ratio is now, which that will drain a bit other states. So what I'm trying to say that this particular specialization leads to a situation wherein the type 2 states, all the actors are happy in the fiscal federal situation except the state government concerned. I don't want to talk so much. I haven't used the word Kerala at all here. If you put Kerala into it, Kerala has invested heavily in the creation of human capital, and ultimately, what has happened? We have actually a situation wherein. So the point I'm trying to say is that I think I didn't go with your with my PowerPoint. Where does the Kerala story and all? It's very story. I don't know how many more minutes. 2 more minutes left.
Oh, you have got
2 more minutes. What?
I'll give you one more.
1 more minute. Okay, because sorry. So this story is very simple. Analytically speaking, if you see the problem in a systemic manner, the way in which Kerala has focused for historical reasons, it has actually benefited the country. It benefited other states. Now the key question is whether, when you are thinking about the fact that India is going to be made a developed economy by 2047, whether ever and also our great prime minister, who is a chief minister turned prime minister, who said that India grows when states grow. It's his statement. Now, if you really want that, if you want to reach this destination, the different states' capability to contribute to that destination is different. You should rather, if you have a strategic approach, you should be having a policy of, on the one hand, promoting those states who can contribute, and at the same time hand-holding the laggards. While so far our finance commission strategy has been only of carrots, no sticks. 18% of the total sub resources goes to UP. I mean, but you should have a policy of carrot and stick. How are you performing? Of course, I was told that they are doing very well. The point I'm trying to say, you need to have a strategy of what is called this doesn't get into the calculus of devolution. We aren't right. There is constitution provides for revenue deficit grant. Now this year I was told it's going to be stopped. The problem here is that every state's revenue deficit grant is seen as same. My dear friends, it is not same. Revenue deficit a state incurs because they spend more for their own development, or their spending is more than their revenue. Because of their own, that contributes to more to their own development. That is very different from a state which incurs revenue deficit grant because they spend more than the revenue. In that process, other states and in the country also benefits. This has to be seen differently. All revenue deficits are not equal. You have to see not to the quantity, you have to look at the quality of the revenue deficit grant, the dynamics behind that. For that, you need to have a public finance or a developing country-oriented, a country-specific public finance. If you are trying to just emulate public finance, which is created and running your models here in an altogether different, if you are not able to think about your context, your public finance will be lifeless, my dear friends. But in this context, building on to that, Kerala has no escape. We have to argue for the union, that we have to have a strategy of working on 2 legs. One, we should continue with getting what is due to us. At the same time, you know that the population of Maharashtra is hardly 13. 13 means 4 times Kerala. But their GDP, their GST collection is 10 times Kerala. That means unless you have the production base, You will have to depend on others, because now whether you get it or not, your GST, you get it or not, depending on how others behave. So what we need to do is that we I think the whole responsibility is with we in the who operating in the knowledge sphere. I'll finish in only 1 more minute I need. The point which I want to ask is one question. I passed out my post graduation from after 22 years and 5 years in the college. Recently, my minister and my governing body asked a question about financial literacy and financial independence. That's the next agenda for gift. After that, I started asking, കർത്താവേ, ഈ 22 വർഷം കോളേജിൽ 5 കൊല്ലം പഠിച്ചിട്ട് ഒരൊറ്റ പീരീഡിലെങ്കിലും 1 മണിക്കൂറെങ്കിലും ഒരു അധ്യാപകനെങ്കിലും ഒരിക്കലെങ്കിലും എന്നോട് ചോദിച്ചിട്ടുണ്ടോ, നീ ഈ ക്യാമ്പസ് വിട്ട് പുറത്തിറങ്ങുമ്പോൾ നീ എങ്ങനെ നിന്റെ സ്വന്തം കാലിൽ നിൽക്കും? ഏതെങ്കിലും ഒരു അധ്യാപകൻ എന്നോട് ചോദിച്ചിട്ടുണ്ടോ ആ കാര്യം? അതിനുള്ള മാർഗം ആരെങ്കിലും എനിക്ക് പറഞ്ഞു തന്നിട്ടുണ്ടോ? ഒരു ആപ്ലിക്കേഷൻ ഫോം ഫില്ലപ്പ് ചെയ്യാൻ പോലും പറഞ്ഞു തന്നിട്ടില്ല. I am asking the question. I'm questioning, saying that we are experts in mugging up. We need to change. Our education system needs to change. We need to have an economics. We need to teach an economics which is linked to reality. Each and every student which is coming to our economics classrooms are coming with an economics textbook of their life in their own family, their own neighborhood, and their locality. And we don't know about what is the GDP of your panchayat, but I don't know. I know the GDP of America. What kind of economics we are talking about? I want to say that again when you get back, I'm just 1 minute. In the university where I go to in China, 17,000 students, and the center there is a supermarket financed by the teachers, and that supermarket is run by the students. And their examination, the questions are, one paper is about the performance and functioning of the supermarket, how the price behavior happens, how the profit changes, what I'm trying to say, their student come out of this thing. So what I'm trying to say that the solution, we are the problem. We the people who are today dealing in the realm of knowledge, we are the problem, not the politicians. And again, if your tax GDP ratio is low, I want to ask one question. Why should you pay tax at all? Why should you pay tax? Tax is paid for feeding me and you and all the government servants. Has there ever one common man, after going to a government office, felt happy? Has any of the public servant is made ought to say that you are a servant. You are a servant of the common man. When a common man comes, please respect him. Have you ever done that? People will not pay tax. In China, I remember when I went to bank, after getting my token, he was instructed to get up and greet the customer with this. So I want to say that public finance is very important topic. I don't want to get into budget, but the point is that your problem. And economics need to stop criticizing. We should think forward into the positive manner. That is where in fact, Balagopal and in fact, even Jyotilal, in fact, I found that we can do many things. We can do. There is not need to run for New Zealand and Australia and everywhere and Canada and USA. We can do it here. You can do it. You can do it. And you should get out of this campus with that resolve. How will you stand on your own leg after you get out of the university? I'm asking the teachers, have you ever provoked your students on this? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Joseph, Professor Joseph. It's wonderful to see him getting highly emotional and making very controversial points. And I hope all of us will have a chance to take on him later. And now, Shri John begs our permission to leave. And thank you very much, Shri John, for being here. So let him leave. And next is Professor Pinaki Chakravarti.
Thank you, Chair. distinguished participants on the dais, dear students. This is indeed a very happy occasion for me to be present here and speak on COVID and state finances, looking at Kerala's finances. Before I go into the specific issues related to Kerala state finances, and I'm sure there are two more presentations, and there was a great discussion in the morning about the state of state finances in Kerala. So I won't get into details of subnational finances specific to Kerala, but I will make some broad points. Before I do that, I would like to raise 6 issues that are, I think, very important post-COVID for the state governments in the context of general government finances. By general government, I mean taking both the center and state finances together. The first issue that I would talk about is issues related to borrowing and the FRBM Act. Second issue that I would briefly talk about is GST and possible changes that can give greater flexibility to the states. Then I'll briefly talk about climate change and its fiscal implications in the specific context of Kerala and some other states that I have studied on this particular issue. And then I'll briefly talk about decentralization and urbanization and how that can have an impact, major impact going forward when we talk about development challenges from the fiscal perspective. So let me start with the borrowing limit and FRBM Act. The first issue, what I think any state government would have to take up with the union government is the kind of flexibility on borrowing that the government of India has provided itself, and similar flexibility has not been provided to the states in the year 2025-26. What is that? In 25-26, government of India has moved from targeting fiscal deficit to targeting debt. Now, the Fiscal Responsibility Act, as it stands today, requires government of India to bring the debt to government of India's debt to GDP ratio to 50% of GDP by 2030-31. So yearly fiscal deficit has been dispensed with. Only thing that will be targeted is the debt ratio. Now, when we talk about debt and when we talk about deficit, there is an important conceptual difference because our debt is not index linked. That means it's not inflation adjusted. So if I have borrowed today and 2030, if my inflation is very high, I'm not saying that we are not growing, but I'm talking about nominal GDP. So if my inflation is very high, I might well achieve 50% of debt to GDP ratio. But if we say that I'm targeting deficit, then the inflation effect is shorter. So it is just for a year. So you have got greater amount of fiscal rigidity if you have deficit as a target rather than debt. I think what government of India has done for itself is a good thing. I think there should be greater flexibility for borrowing, but similar flexibility should be accorded to the states. And I haven't seen a single state raising this issue, including Kerala. So that's the first point that I wanted to raise. The second issue that I wanted to raise is the issues related to GST. Now, GST is a done deal. Now, the constitution has been amended. It's very difficult now to say that this GST is not giving us what we thought it would. And then what do we do? I think given that constitution has been amended, so the focus now will have to be on design of GST. So we really cannot go back on a constitutional amendment. That's not possible. And GST also has a lot of benefits. It's supposed to develop a common market, and some progress has happened in that regard. It's a very complex issue. But I think what is very important that to consider, in my view, in this the existing GST regime as it stands today is pretty rigid. It's numerically rigid, and in that context, I think it is very important that a concept of floor rate is introduced for the states. So if a concept of floor rate is introduced, so it gives within this rigidity some flexibility to the states depending on its revenue requirement. The state can you can also put an upper bound on that. So states can have a greater flexibility, and center state can be where it is today. So a floor rate in GST can bring larger flexibility. That's the second thing. Third thing I wanted to also argue that when we talk about general revenue neutral rate, I think revenue neutral rate, there has not been any work, substantive work on what is the actual revenue neutral rate. Revenue neutral rate concept itself is very problematic because GST is supposed to give me more revenue. So you should not be talking about revenue neutral rate. We should be talking about something which gives us more revenue. So what kind of an optimal revenue neutral rate we should be talking about by taking out a lot of commodities from the lower rate and reduce the upper rate is one option. Other option is that you have the average rate, average rate maintained at 18% as it is today, but give greater, don't divide it on the 50-50 basis. So if you give a higher rate with a floor to the states, I think that brings in a lot of flexibility. I think some discussion in this regard has to start if we are talking about next 5 years, how states' fiscal autonomy will be affected. Again, unfortunately, there is no discussion on that. GST meetings are generally on about restructuring the rates, etc. So I think fundamentally we should talk about redesigning GST. And since Kerala is in the forefront of raising center state issues, I thought I should raise this forum. I should use this forum to raise these issues. Now the third issue is climate change and its fiscal implications. I think Professor Joseph was mentioning about going forward. What are the fiscal challenges? Morning, the minister also had mentioned about the climate responsive expenditure, public expenditure. And you also mentioned about revenue deficit grant by the union. Now, the kind of climate related expenditure in the next 15 to 20 years states will have to do, especially on adaptation expenditure, is going to be very significant. Though we talk about all kinds of private funds coming in to deal with climate financing expenditure, to make investment in climate sensitive areas to mitigate climate change, I think that expenditure is very insignificant. More than 80% of the climate change related investment is in the public sector globally. That's a fact, and nobody talks about it. So if everything, a large part, if we say 80% of it is still going to be from the public sector, that means through the budget, primarily through the budget. In that context, I think it becomes very important to actually estimate that cost, because that is going to increase revenue expenditure of the states. We are talking about education, we are talking about health, but we are really not talking about an expenditure that is going, that there is no second question that it is not going to be there. It is only going to increase, it will increase the overall budgetary burden of the state governments, subnational governments. And in that context, what will be its implications on revenue deficit? So if we are talking about revenue deficit as an instrument, if we are talking about managing revenue deficit, I think it is very important to take into consideration what is my climate expenditure need going forward, apart from the social sector expenditure and economic expenditure, economic service expenditure that we talk about. The last issue that I wanted to highlight before I conclude is the issues related to decentralization and urbanization. Now, what is the urbanization? As a researcher, as a policy research exercise, thought exercise, what was the last work that was done in India? That was a committee which was headed by Dr. Ishajaj Aluwalia, the high-level committee on urban investment, and that said some $1 billion to be invested up to 2030. I think it is time we also understand that urbanization has increased at a very fast pace. India is no longer rural, and all the available estimates that we see in terms of projection, 52% of Indian population is going to live in urban areas by 2050. That's the way urbanization is going to put pressure on states like Kerala, which is urbanized, have high income per capita income, and you also have aging population. So I with the kind of influx of migrant we see, it's also there are a lot of pull factor apart from the push factors from the source states. And in that context, the kind of urban expenditure that states will have to undertake is something which needs to be factored in when we are talking about budgetary policy and expenditure. And in that context, I would think that the state governments, especially state government like Kerala, I think should ask for a borrowing requirement, flexible borrowing power beyond the FRBM Act for green investment. I think that is something that the state can ask. And it should be over and above the FRBM limit. If something can be given for power sector, for reforming power sectors, you give extra borrowing for, why not for climate investment? I think that is something which is very, very important. And lastly, I think for a state like Kerala, which is highly connected with the global economy, the kind of global uncertainties we see, and the honorable minister was talking about Trump tariff and its impact on Kerala's export sector, especially marine exports. I think we also need to understand how that is going to have an impact on consumption investment. I think very short-term analysis is very important. I think these are going forward, these are going to be a major challenge. And in that context, if we actually map earlier shocks, and I tried to do that. So if you look at global financial crisis, which were the states most affected in terms of public finances? It was Maharashtra, it was Kerala, it was Tamil Nadu, because these are Gujarat. So these are the states which also has high international exposure. So in such context, given that we are having very high geopolitical uncertainty, economic uncertainty, supply chain disruption, I think we also need to talk about how do you how do we then, given that there is very limited power with the state government, in that context, what kind of fiscal intervention the center should do to protect the states? I think that is the other area of intervention a state like Kerala should do. Finally, on the question of overall fiscal situation in Kerala, I think Kerala also has to get out of this. I don't know whether to use the word, this guilt about high revenue deficit. I think we should anyway, the center also has gotten rid of the revenue deficit target from its FRBM Act 2018. So that we are not going to monitor. We are going to monitor fiscal deficit. Now they have discontinued that. Now they only did. So in a state where there is a high revenue deficit requirement because of the way that it spends, and which paid dividend in terms of tradable, non-tradable that you talked about, I think it is also important to ask for similar flexibility as far as FRBM is concerned. So to say that since I have a revenue deficit, I'm badly managed, I think that narrative itself has a fundamental problem. So point is, yes, some states, if you go to say Gujarat and Maharashtra, I think a lot of people would tell you, and I think rightly so, this is that given the kind of private capital that in gets invested here, and kind of multiplier effects it has, I can have a revenue surplus. I also cannot have a low capital expenditure because private capital is sufficient enough to give me 10-12% nominal growth. But if that is not the case in Kerala, so in such a situation, should we then not be talking about a more flexible FRBM framework? So in that context, those 37%, sorry, that 1.9% or 1.6% revenue deficit to ratio and the fiscal, there should be a limit on fiscal deficit because we cannot have an unrestricted borrowing power as a subnational unit. But to say that, revenue deficit is a sign of terrible fiscal mismanagement. I think that's very wrong in the context of certain states who have got high level of social sector expenditure. So I stop at that, and thank you very much. I concluded before 2 minutes. Still left from my.
Thank you, Professor Pinaki, for raising an extremely pertinent set of issues for debate uh, in today's succeeding sessions and maybe tomorrow too. But I particularly like the last point he made, that our revenue deficit is also a deficit created on account of capital investment in in education and healthcare. And I think we should rethink. We should generate more debate about dealing with these issues. Let me not take that much time, but it was fascinating to listen to him and to Joseph too before that. And since Mohan is not going to be around, I'm requesting Siddiq to come. Thank you. It's working. I can see this. So എങ്ങനെ മൂവ് ചെയ്യും ഇതാണ് ഇല്ല ഇതെന്താ പറ്റി ഞാൻ എൻ്റെ ലാപ്ടോപ്പ് എടുക്കും ഇവിടെ ഇതായി but it is not going down. Where's my laptop? Yeah. Is that okay? എവിടെ Good afternoon, all. Thank you, Professor Joseph, for inviting me to have a presentation on social expenditure. When he asked about presentation, I was actually a little bit stultified. Why? What should I speak? Especially when you are in the plight of having different expenditure issue. So I thought to basically speak on the social expenditure because given that everyone talked about different aspect of the revenue side as well as other issue, I would like to see that what has actually happened in the last 10 years, especially the seminar is on COVID. So before 5 years and during the period, the last 10 years, what happened in the large spending in all the states. So I'm strictly focusing on expenditure only. So this is the, it's not moving again. It is not moving. Next. Keyboard ഉപയോഗിക്കാം keyboard എവിടെ yeah that will be better okay sorry for all the inconvenience so let me actually start the whole thing based on these questions. So although the level of income has been hurt due to COVID, what happened to the expenditure of the relative high performing states in South India? So this is what is the question which is immediately came into my mind. And given in the total expenditure of the state, what is the social expenditure pattern in South? And what happened to the expenditure growth of social sector during the pre and post-COVID pandemic, indeed, socio-economic, amidst of the socio-economic crisis? And who
spent where at what rate in different social sector and what we can learn from. So these are the questions roughly came into my mind. And these questions are also related with the hypothesis that in times of public crisis, normally the expenditure of the state normally go up. So this also intrigued me to calculate the ratio of per capita expenditure among these states. So this is what is actually the empirical point. So let me start with all the 5 states of the South. This is the first curve, that is per capita total expenditure, combined social expenditure of both the state. But let me speak this thing, that is the Andhra Pradesh per capita expenditure is something around 26,000 per head. In 2024, 2014-15, and that has actually gone up to almost 70,000. So this is what is actually the per capita spending uh, of the state, and where we have to also keep in mind that the per capita income of the state at that time, that is during 2014-15, it was roughly 1 lakh. So the state is actually spent more than like more than 25% of the per capita in terms. So this is what is actually the trend of Andhra Pradesh, and this is the trend of Karnataka, where also the Karnataka's per capita expenditure in terms of its own per capita income is 200, roughly 20,000, and it has gone up to 4,000, 45,000. So this is actually the spending of the state per capita spending. It is a per capita, I calculate, yeah, rupees, yeah, current price. So yeah, it is in 1,000 rupees. So I have actually, in order to make it convenient, smaller. So yeah, yeah. So this is Kerala. We have actually an increase in expenditure, except 2 years. That is the last 2 years. This is from the accounts of the CAG. So this is again increasing, and this is the case with the Tamil Nadu, that is also increasing. And this is which one? Yeah, last in 2022-23, it is actually flattened, and again it is increased. I will come to that point later. Then in terms of Tamil Nadu, the same is actually happening. And Telangana too, the trend is actually the same. So why I made this calculation, because normally we said that because of a crisis, probably the expenditure comes down. But in public expenditure terms, per capita public expenditure terms, if you calculate, actually it has gone up. So crisis actually leads a higher spending from the part of the state, especially when the last 5 years, the rate at which the expenditure increased in all the states, oh, all the states has actually sharply increasing. This is actually 5 states together. So it is all increasing, but at different rates. The increase is at a different state. Different states has different rate. Especially if you look into the Tamil Nadu as well as the Karnataka context, the expenditure is actually increases in an annual simple mean growth rate. If you look over the 10 years, you can see that the increase is something around 28 to 30%. Whereas Kerala and Andhra Pradesh, it is 40%. Whereas Telangana, the increase in total expenditure is actually mean expenditure increases something around 69%, 68%. So though they have all started at a very lower rate, a similar rate, but actually over the last 10 years, expenditure in all the 5 states is actually increasing at different rate, and of course at different. But this is actually the expenditure pattern. But my concern is actually the social expenditure. What has actually happened in why social expenditure is because these states, relatively, when you speak about all India, these 5 states had relatively doing better, but again, that is also in a relatively different rate. Especially Kerala and Tamil Nadu is doing better, much better in social expenditure when you compare with the other. But is that true in all through the 10 years? So this is the question. So this is in the per capita expenditure on social expenditure. This is actually this trend, and that is also going to go up. But my question is that is it actually relatively increasing? That is expenditure in the total expenditure with that of actually the total expenditure of social sector spending. But unfortunately, the data says it is actually falling. Relatively, the relative expenditure of the social sector expenditure is in fact falling on all. Yeah, yeah. I'll. Yeah, the Andhra Pradesh is the green light, green color. Okay. It is actually naturalized color comes in this. So, no, Kerala is in the middle. Kerala is in the middle. That is in the hard line. That is one is actually steeply falling in the last year. So this is actually Kerala. So yes, indeed. So so this is actually again I was actually cross verified the same data with the normal percentage change. That is also says that there is a fall. Same. So so this is also interestingly per capita social expenditure on education, but unfortunately that is not the whole picture. It is not reduced in all the sector, but it has actually gone down in certain section, and some states do have certain advantage in some spending, because we have almost 8 heads in the social sector expenditure. This is the first and the important head, which is Kerala is known for the education, arts, sports, culture head. Kerala per capita expenditure is way ahead than all the 5 states. So this is actually the strength of the Kerala economy, and that is corroborates with the Kerala model of spending. So this is why it is very important, because though it is actually going down, but not in the education sector, not in the culture, arts, and all other uh, hit where the state is spending. We had actually per capita spending like 40 for almost like 3,800 rupees per head in every person is actually spent by the government, which is way ahead than any other state who do. But that is again consistently increasing, but other states are catching up. For example, Tamil Nadu is catching up with Kerala, and their social expenditure on education is indeed increasing over the period. Yeah, I'll come to that. Yeah. 21, 22, definitely 22, 23, and 23. Yes. No. COVID year is increased actually from 19, 20, 21, 20, 2021, 21, 22 is actually moving up, sharply increasing. During the COVID period, we have actually spent. Yeah, but after that, it is actually falling down, because that is why there is, I would call that as actually a postponement rather than not paying from the center as well as others. It is actually a political economy question, largely a political economy question. Other than that, no other answers immediately one can call out, because many sectors it has been affected. Again, the strength of Kerala is on the social expenditure on the health family welfare. That is also the per capita expenditure of Kerala is far ahead than other South Indian states. And this trend is also continuing, but except that 2 years, that last two years, it is actually falling, whereas other states are catching up. Now, this is again, we have a higher per capita expenditure, which is also the labor welfare. So Kerala's expenditure on this head is also much higher when you compare with the other states. So these 3 heads, Kerala is way ahead than the other states, and these are the 3 segments where Kerala is known for its high human development. But what about the other sectors? So information, we are in between, like we are in a dilly-dally state, but there are other states where doing fairly great expenditure, especially in the context of housing, sanitation, water supply. We are lagging much behind than the other states. Then social expenditure on social welfare, nutrition, we also, again, Kerala is that the dark line, we are in between. So our expenditure is actually way below. Per capita expenditure is way below. And expenditure on SC, ST, OBC, the Andhra Pradesh and Telangana, in fact, had pumped up a lot of expenditure on that aspect. Like they have moved from a very abysmally low 10%, 10,000, sorry, 1,000 per capita expenditure to almost 7,000 per capita. So this is actually their focus is actually now increasingly on this CST, OBC segment of expenditure. So, but Kerala is not, Kerala and Tamil Nadu is actually doing fairly consistent, but lower rate, the lower rate. Then again, on the other heads, we have a pretty, mediocre state. So these are actually the kind of expenditure pattern which I was, because I have given only 10 minutes, so I would like to strict within the time, and that is what this is actually the overall trend and pattern. When the same question, if I ask, our basically our projections as well as our own performance is at a moderate level, especially in the last 2 years, the expenditure is actually falling. Two things, because morning also there are people said that there is always a delayed transfer is happening. One is from 2022-23 onwards, we have a great fiscal anomalies is happening. I don't know. That is not the that is probably one reason, because you may get the money for this year and it has actually been delayed. Because of delayed, your expenditure has actually been slower down, and this is actually happening. So this is actually called the politics of postponement, I would call. So politics of postponement is actually very much happens only in Kerala, not other states. No other state is having this problem.
Is that what you meant by political economy?
Yes, yes, that's it. Because I don't want to actually have more discussion on that aspect. Let me stick with the data set. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Dr. Siddiq. Again, bringing before you fascinating range of issues concerning social spending, where we are, how we have progressed, and how other states, in particular, Tamil Nadu, has caught up with us, and the reflection of that on other parameters. I hope you gathered here will have a chance to look into such things. In fact, I'm interested in them for the simple reason I've been looking at wages. Anyway, I won't bore you with that. But then let me request Ranjit, Dr. Ranjit here, and he will be the last speaker. After that, we have one discussant. And come and please occupy a place here, sir.
Thank you, sir. Distinguished panelist and expert of the days, Professor K.P. Kannan, Professor K.N. Hellal, Professor Deenaran, and others. I would like to extend the first point of Professor Pinaki Chakraborty has mentioned about borrowing and public debt. So we have done a series of exercises for the last 5 years on these issues. And some of these issues are already there in our working paper series and Kerala economy articles, and some are on progressing, and some are on the process of making it as a. Most of the materials are empirical exercise. So I would like to consolidate our all exercise, our series of exercise into one frame. Okay, so as Professor Joseph mentioned, Professor KJ mentioned, we are working on different pillars. So I'm actually heading the third pillar, that is the debt deficit of states and state and center. Now, as I mentioned already, he has mentioned what is the situation in the country, and we have a framework. And most of this, whatever I'm going to present here, the analytics is there in my, in the working paper or the economy article. Those who are interested can see that. but some of the insights only I'm trying to project here. So through the lens of sustainability framework. So before I go to my PPT, I'll just mention that, as Sir mentioned, that per se is not a bad thing, but it should be sustainable with the condition that we are going to face in the future. Right? That should be actually the term sustainability has been defined by many. Can you? Okay. Okay. No, I'm a Okay, so the term sustainability has been defined by many people under different connotations, different circumstances. Here, in my context, debt sustainability or fiscal sustainability in broad sense and debt sustainability in narrow sense. So the sustainable broad sense, people often say that it's overall budget balance in a positive trend. That means surplus in the future. But IMF says one definition, so I'm just copying that definition. IMF says your debt is sustainable as long as it is not accumulated at a rate considerably exceeding its capacity to service back without any adjustment or negotiating or defaulting or some kind of balancing mechanism from other tires. So I'm using this framework for building my sustainability condition. Okay, so we have different framework based on the definition to assess the sustainability in a physical scenario. Okay, so I'm using, as everybody knows, that we are mostly following the Dormer condition, 1944 Dormer condition, that growth interest rate differential should be uh, positive to say your debt is or debt or deficit or debt is sustainable. And later, many of the empirical exercise has come to the picture with time series properties, with co-integration, with stationarity condition, and all people have defined sustainability. Basically, it should be a mean reverting process. So here I am using Henning Bond's 1998 sustainability framework, where it says that your current period debt should be present value of future primary surpluses. That means it is nothing but intertemporal budget constraints should be satisfied. If that satisfies, your debt is sustainable. So the whole exercise I have done based on this basic premise. So your IBC should be satisfied to say it is sustainable. That is sufficiency condition. Okay, so now come to the situation, the context. Context you already set by many experts here. And as everybody knows, that we have constitutional provisions. We have already, as Professor K. Joseph mentioned, that our expenditure responsibility is higher for the states, and center it is comparatively low, and the revenue powers are comparatively very less for the state government. This creates the fiscal imbalance situation. Even after transfer mechanism, the states are not in a position to meet the expenditure responsibility. They have no other option has to borrow. So we have Article 293 to clearly define what are the borrowing provisions and how much, what are the conditions through which the state can exercise this facility. But the basic point is we don't have, states cannot borrow directly from the external sources. So that's the thing. And 2003, we have FRBM Act. FRBM Act, as per FRBM Act, you know that the initial FRBM Act, you have 3% fiscal deficit should be there, and your revenue deficit should gradually comes to zero level. And later in FRO review committee has changed the target to debt. That means debt should be 60% at general government level and 40 has to be for the center, and state it is 20%. That should be the allocation. Now again the discussion is going on, because even after 20 years the states are not in a position to meet the target and to achieve the targets. And Kerala in particular, we have an off budget provision that is very much popular, KIFBI. As you all know, that is not, it was earlier not part of the the regular budget framework. Now, because of the center's intervention, it is now the off-budget part is now coming to the budget side. So, but my analysis actually, I'm keeping this KIFBI part, the off-budget liabilities part away, as this is a separate thing. I'm not bringing here for my discussion. And one statement here, actually, many economists already predicted in various papers that states with strong welfare commitments often face sustainability risk. So this has been a case, as Sir mentioned, in the developed country context. Some of the exercise people have made some attempt to prove this statement. Okay, so with this background, so I'm going to continue the discussion through the lens of sustainability framework. And my exercise starts from the GST post. I mean, yes, this is a post-COVID thing. We have to focus more, but I'll start from the GST compensation, the sustainability framework, how it worked during the post GST compensation framework period. You know that 2017 to 22 we had GST compensation, and we had actually attempted to work this formula during this period. Whether during this period, without GST compensation, any states in India is a position to hold a sustainable conditions. But and we have some adjustment in the original bond model to catch that, and we could find that except one state, no other states are in a position to meet a sustainability condition. Uh, that is one interesting result that we got. Then we extended during the COVID period. You know that RBI has made an important remark on during 2022, says that Kerala is one among the fiscally, fragile or fiscally risky state. That has a lot of media attention, and that people have extended the discussion into different directions and all. So we have done the exercise during the COVID time, and we made some interesting result that I will show. Then we have recently started on work with population aging. Okay, you know the states, the population condition, the aging population according to 2019 population projections. Our aging population is basically going like anything. Now, our the I have a graph to show that how it is changing over a period of time. And with all these conditions, we have made a sustainability threshold. Okay. So how much, I mean, this is actually again a question of, center has to put a threshold, or general government threshold should be there first, then followed by the state government. These all questions are there. But we have attempted to do one work for the Kerala state. Because debt should be the primary target. So threshold should start from debt. Accordingly, the path has to define for the deficit based on the growth condition. So we have made one attempt, and we have made a consolidation path as well. Now, this is a graph. I think it is not that visible. I mean, you can see the whatever Professor Pinaki Chakraborty has mentioned is there in the last part. You know, the positions of the first column says union's position, and second column says all states position, and the third one stays combined, central and states together, and the fourth one is Kerala in the case of fiscal deficit and also the outstanding liabilities. And the position of now, you can see 2023, 24, and 24, 25. 24, 25, actually all state together data is not available. That's what's missing. And you can see that now the Kerala's debt position is 34.1. Okay. And after the FRBM, actually, there was a slight improvement in all levels, debt and deficit conditions. But after 2010, it has come down, it has deteriorated, and now this is the current position. Post-COVID has made a big shock on this profile, and now we reach this position. So this is just to say the background. And I think this is, okay, some issue with the graph. You can see the Kerala's position in terms of debt to GDP ratio and deficit. This is the top one is debt position. Kerala actually stands at 4. Uh, you can see the situation. This is actually 2022-23 data, because that is an actual data available for a comparable thing. And depth position also there in the bottom graph. So you can see the positions. Now, yeah, this is a, and now I want to just show one more interesting graph to say that this is actually our recent work on this. Actually, the demography, a special case for Kerala. Like, Kerala is a special case where you have all sort of demographic issue we are actually having, and the old age dependency ratio is crossing, I think, 25%, according to the projection. So actually, the projections of technical group one population says that 2036 India will become a middle-aged. This and life expectancy rate also increasing now. So this will create an issue of fiscal issue to mainly through 3 ways. You can see public health expenditure will have an issue. Okay. This is from this population. Base data is from population projection.
Those in the workforce.
This is actually, sir, older people. This population projection data. National Commission for Population Projection. So 19 data, 19 report.
Kind of presumably, people outside the labor force are dependent on those in the labor force. Contestable. That's what he's raising.
Okay, we can see, sir. Yeah. So, so the point is that, okay, this um, uh, three important ways it can have an impact on the fiscal side of the states, because public health expenditure will have a big push, as you all know. Civil pension expenditure, because life expectancy rate is increasing. Now, state has to keep a big amount of money every year for this pension spending. And welfare pension expenditure also now almost 10,000 crores states are spending. Half of this amount is actually going for the old age population. So this is going to have a positive trend in the near future. Maybe exponential growth in the expense side can happen. Uh, that is what our observation. So this actually, again, it is an ongoing work. And as I mentioned, during GST thing, we have observed that during the GST compensation period, we got a result that GST compensation grants explicitly subsidize the state government debt, because immediately after that, after the GST compensation period, some states have gone very bad, and some states could improve a bit. That's what our addition to this exercise has shown. Now, RBI's risk analysis we are extending here. So our estimates, I think this work is actually going to upload in the next working paper. So based on our estimate from the bond sustainability framework, the current estimated positions at all levels. So we have done at the union level, state level, combined level, and at the Kerala specific level. All level it is showing an unsustainable position now. So including the COVID years, we have made to control the COVID effect also, and we are getting these results. And our estimate suggests that all dependency ratio increases, it becomes increasingly difficult to maintain a positive trend in the primary balance, because primary balance, a sufficient primary balance is required to say it is sustainable. Okay, so this will have a challenging task for states like Kerala, Tamil Nadu, and so on, having higher aging population. Now, okay, so okay. Now, to achieve sustainability, so we have done. Okay, so So we have done some exercise, a threshold level, threshold model exercise, econometric exercise we have done, and we have arrived threshold for each level. And for Kerala, we have found that the sustainable position is 27.8. You see, the current position is 34.1. Actually, we have to reduce to 27.8 percentage to say Kerala's debt position is sustainable. Actually, based on this, we have done a fiscal consolidation path also to reach this level. So, with the current level of growth and also the interest payment we are actually paying. So our estimate suggests that on an average, if government at all level maintain 3% deficit and 12% normal growth, they will be able to reach a sustainable position within maximum of 8-year period. But we have different strategies. Okay, suppose the deficit is increasing and growth level, you are achieving higher growth level, you will have the less time to adjust. Okay, so still this is also a work in progress thing, and we are working in different strategies to realizing the given condition in the state. Uh, so basic observations are like this. I'm not going to read all these things. So 4 points I just want to highlight with respect to this result. The one thing is now Kerala, we are under 16th Finance Commission, as all everybody knows that we have in the provision of 16th Finance Commission, as per the Constitution, we have to 80D, where you have to have some concern on sound finance. Okay, so uh, that sound finance part, I think that also should be an agenda for. I mean, they don't have a specific agenda this time, but I think as a restructuring of fiscal framework is necessary for considering the states into because we are all targeting for the Vikasit Bharat 2047 states contribution is very necessary. So I think 16 finance should consider restructuring the fiscal position by taking the clause sound finance. And expenditure side, yes, we have some expenditure, issues there, but expenditure rationalization should happen. Now, I think the expenditure review committee is now working on that, I think. And from the revenue side, yes, we have to have some revenue, boost. And I think we are getting the GST data to review. I think we can, if we get some GST data, I think we have a team to work on GST data. I think we'll we'll be able to make our observation on that. And most importantly, the last point, as Sir mentioned, it should be. I mean, the putting on an arbitrary 3% limit to fiscal deficit will have more problem in the future. Uh, Instead of putting an uniform without rationale an arbitrary number 3%, we have to work out state specific target based on the sustainability framework for each state, and based on that as a primary target we have to work out, and you have to see the multiplier effect of each state. So we have initiated a work to figure out multiplier effect, because that means 1 rupee, if government is pumping on the economy, how much it translates. So that work we have now initiated. I think we'll get some interesting result to present in the next presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Ranjit, for again drawing attention to the wonderful work being done by his fellow academics in this institute. And he has raised a lot of issues for us to debate at the debt sustainability, the linkage with per capita income, problems in, whole variety of issues. And I hope we get a chance to revisit these issues before we have got 10 minutes to be given to the discussant, Dr. Justin George. And after that, we will have, I hope we have some time for a bit of discussion here on from the participants in the audience. And I wish, I look for the students to raise more questions. Not necessarily. You can sum up the discussion. You can raise pertinent points which struck you and what you learn from this place. And that could be the way we can organize a discussion on the issues covered here. So, Dr. Justin George.
Once again, thank you very much, Dr. Joseph and team, for inviting me to this Kerala Economy Seminar and to discuss and to become a discussion initiator for this session. So starting with, I will try to make not as a discussion rather than to make so many questions out of the floor and also from my own mind and my own sense. Starting with the CP John, he was trying to understand how can we improve the state-owned tax revenue as an alternative model. And he also talked about public resource mobilization in Kerala. Then to Joseph, the fiscal health of a subnational entity. He's also talked on remittance and specially mentioned on the quantity and the quality of the revenue deficit. Back to Pinaki Chakravarti, he broadly presented the state finance from a national perspective and also discussed on the GST regime, redesigning GST, and the climate change, issues of the power sectors, and finally concluded with consumption and investment issues with related to tariff. Then to Siddiq, and he actually presented a broad empirical view of the social expenditure, which I would call a complex picture of the empirical social expenditure of Kerala vis-a-vis the South Indian states. And finally, Ranjit, the Kerala's fiscal challenges from a sustainable perspective. So my objective is just to make some of the issues which we discussed and some of the issues which I would like to focus on. Starting with in the morning session, the Honorable Finance Minister, just like a public finance expert, he stressed upon first we should look on the income side of the government. So I start with the income side of the government. That is broadly a question. We have been discussing so much on the declining the divisible pool share of the Kerala. But we must also understand a empirical anomaly. That is the total share of central grants and tax to Kerala reached at the level of 3% of SGDP in 2015 and 16, which rose to around 5.2% in 2022. What could be the reason for that? How do we explain that? Is it because of the compensation of GST and the related? We should also discuss in a relative perspective from a state domestic product, why the total share of grant and tax is actually increasing. That is also a question. Then coming back to the contingent liabilities of Kerala, especially in the post-COVID period, what is really happening? If you look the contingent liability of Kerala, it is moving in tandem with the fiscal deficit. What is the quality of the contingent liability in the post-COVID period? Is it worsening? Then if you look deep into the quantity, the contingent liability, the share of government companies' liability is increasing in the post-2015 period. It was only 45% in 2015-16, which rose to 77% in 21-23. What could be the reason for that? Are these companies become the financing instrument of development? Or are these companies become borrowing just because the financial incapabilities of these companies? What could be the reason for that? Given the broad fiscal context of the state, we must also understand what could be the reason for that. Then there is also a question the trust of public sector enterprises in Kerala, which is already noted by the Honorable Finance Minister and also some of the speakers. I would also argue that there is a question of transparency from the context of contingent liability and also the off budget liability. Why government companies are borrowing more? So we should also look on the ceiling on the contingent liability and also for the timely reporting of the liability. When you look KIFBI, non-debt liabilities are actually increasing. 65% in 1892, 83% in 2021-22. That is not my point. That is already there in the literature. My concern is spending and the source of funding of KIFBI. If we look KIFBI funding, we basically focus on the infrastructural requirement of health and education, which should be there. My argument is that state can also rethink the expenditure prioritization of KIFBI. For example, the state can focus on the revenue earning projects having a gestation period of less than 10 years, maybe in the tourism and the related sector. The minister is already stated on that also. There is also a question, how could the state continues its development and the social sector expenditure given the context of fiscal stress? Is fiscal stress as becoming into a development crisis? That is also a question. Then another concern is with regard to the remittance, which is already pointed out by Dr. KJ Joseph. Given the stagnation in the productive sectors, the question is how long Kerala can maintain the consumption-based economy fueled primarily through the remittance flow. Kannan and Hari paper in 2022, they clearly estimated the remittance share in NSDP. It was 23% in 23% up to 2010, declined to 15% from 2015 onwards. What could be the impact of that structural decline of remittance on Kerala economy? Decline of the fiscal deficit in the post-COVID period, which is already highlighted. That is from 4.6% in 2021 to 2.4% in 22-23, which is already discussed. I must also remember one more variable to that, which you can connect. That is a percentage share of expenditure of development expenditure declined from 8.2% of state domestic product to 5.0% during the same period, which is also a source of concern. So other states, the story is very different, not completely different. So with regard to the state-owned tax revenue, again, there is a concern which is already there, that is declining from so-called 8.1% in 2013 to 6.9% in 2019-20 as a percentage of NSDP. And again, it is increasing from post-COVID period. My question is that, what could be the reason for the decline of SOTR from 2013 onwards? What is the reason for the growth in the post-COVID period? If you understand that, maybe I have done something on that, which what is the reason for the decline and what is the reason? If you look composition wise, the story is very interesting and I force you to discuss on that. Maybe I can also participate in that. So with that, I conclude. Thank you.
Thank you, Justin George. He raised queries about each of the presentation here, about the accuracy of the estimates, about the figures, the implications of that. Now, let me say, we have just about 15 minutes for discussion on the floor. And I would like all of you, those of you who would like to, please ask your questions very briefly. If it is addressed to any one of the panel speakers, you can mention. Otherwise, raise points about what you learned here, and let's initiate the main takeaways, a debate on discussion on the takeaways from today's session. Okay, and please feel free to 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 to.
Need not to
Hmm?
restrict the response only from the stage, get them from anywhere. Knowledge is not only here.
No. You are the perpetrators of today's mischief. Yeah, please. And now listen, those of you who like to speak, please mention your name and the institute or the institution you belong to, and please go ahead. I'm afraid I will intervene only if it exceeds a time limit. Okay.
Hello, my name is Banlal. I am coming from Kochi University of Science and Technology. So, my question to Siddiq sir. സാറ് മെൻഷൻ ചെയ്തിരിക്കുന്നത് ഈ സ്പെൻഡിങ് സോഷ്യൽ സ്പെൻഡിങ്ങിനെ കുറിച്ചാണ്. ഇപ്പം കേരളത്തിന് കോൺടെസ്റ്റ് ചെയ്യുമ്പോഴത്തേക്കും ബാക്കി സ്റ്റേറ്റിനെ കമ്പയർ ചെയ്യുമ്പോഴത്തേക്കും SC/ST സ്പെൻഡിങ് അതുകൂടെ ഹൗസിംഗ് സ്പെൻഡിങ് ഒക്കെ കമ്പാരിറ്റീവ് ലോ എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞു. അത് ഓൾറെഡി അത് അച്ചീവ്മെന്റ് ആയതിന്റെ ഒരു റിഫ്ലക്ഷൻ ആയിട്ടാണോ, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഇപ്പോൾ സാർ പറഞ്ഞിരിക്കുന്നുണ്ട് എഡ്യൂക്കേഷൻ ഒക്കെ ഓൾറെഡി കൂടെ സ്പെൻഡ് ചെയ്യുന്നുണ്ട്, അതിൽ നിന്ന് ഒരു ഫണ്ട് ട്രാൻസ്ഫറിന്റെ ആവശ്യമുണ്ടോ? SC/ST സ്പെൻഡിങ് അതേപോലെ തന്നെയുള്ള ഹൗസിംഗ് സ്പെൻഡിങ് അതേപോലത്തുള്ള സോഷ്യൽ സെക്യൂരിറ്റി സ്പെൻഡിങ്ങിലേക്ക് ആവശ്യമുണ്ടോ? അതാണ് എന്റെ ക്വസ്റ്റ്യൻ.
Thank you. And any other, listen, there is way of responding. Let me ask Joseph, you take all the questions or let Siddiq respond? Which one? Take all the questions but then we won't. At the end. All right. All right. All right. No, the question came to Siddiq and then anyone else, please. Yeah.
Myself, Manu Prasad from Center for Budget Studies. My question is to Dr. Ranjit sir. Sir, while we are discussing about this sustainable debt position over Kerala, also somewhat our national level, can you suggest any international sustainable debt practice from other rest of the world, especially from any other service-oriented economies in the world, or for the Kerala model of development? Actually, my question is about, can you give some experience from the rest of the world that's exactly same like Kerala?
Okay, good. And
No answers. These questions are less than 10.
Eh?
These questions are less than 10. No answers.
Ashwini, yes,
Yeah.
please.
I'm the faculty of Gulati Institute of Finance and Taxation. Thank you all esteemed speakers for bringing in a spectrum of issues related to fiscal scenario, especially with related to Kerala. I would like to underscore a point that raised by Professor Pinagi. It's regarding making the adaptation expenditure as a criteria for additional borrowing space. So, given the nature of the adaptation expenditure, that is the long gestation period, and it's less linkage with the revenue stream. So, when we want to adopt such kind of a strategy, what kind of borrowing norms that to be brought in? Thank you.
Hello, my name is Ritik, and I am a PhD scholar here. So my question will be to all of you to respond, because that is on the conditionalities which central government impose upon the state government. When Justin Sir spoke on summarize all the things, he mentioned that the grants in aid is increasing. But where this grants in aid is increasing is important, and that is more or less on CSS. And is that a welcoming sign that the centrally sponsored schemes are the share on centrally sponsored schemes are increasing? Is that a welcoming sign? Because the states such as Kerala, Tamil Nadu having a good governance, they can give a matching grant and submit the utility certificate to the central government and take the fund as they want. But that is being spent on wrong priorities. That is because of the conditionalities which the central government is imposing, and Kerala and Tamil Nadu have identified that because of that, the states will lose further, because they are not going to impose implement the conditionalities which given to the PMAY and the PM3 kind of thing. So what's the panel's take on that?
And again, one thing is we are talking about targeting debt, sustainability of debt kind of thing. And the taking of grant, it should be based on the philosophy of taking a borrowing should be based on the priorities or the just this sustainability framework. That's my another question. And we all know the GDP to debt to GDP ratio. That is the thing which we are using for targeting. And we know debt is a stock variable and GDP is a flow variable. So how much we can rely on such variables to target? Thank you.
That's addressed to a number of people. Ritik, I would have asked you to explain what you meant by conditionalities. Anyway, let's not go into that. I suppose people understand that here. Shruti.
Yeah. Thank you. The session was really wonderful. My question is, probably since Ranjit spoke about sustainability, it is directly to him. But I think anybody can answer that because it would be very insightful to hear from others as well. Ranjit mentioned that the study is still a working paper. I understand that. But my doubt is uh, the whole analysis was with the KIFB outside, right? If I'm right. So you excluded the KIFB, the whole KIFB expenditure and the whole debate about KIFB. So the conclusion was it'll take 8 years given all the data. So if at all we have to include KIFB, then do you think what will happen to your estimates? It will definitely increase. And also, I would like you to respond to the fact that since the government and the central government debate is still going on, and the central government has actually asked us to include that in the budget borrowings. So how practical is it to do an analysis excluding KIFB? Thank you.
Thank you. I think we close the questions. All right, maybe the last one, sir.
So we have two.
Oh, Harilal. No, Harilal, let me give him a chance. I did not notice you. That's why you will always have the last word. Yes, of course. Yes, please. No. Few minutes. Just few minutes. Okay.
Okay. My name is Exta from Department of Commerce, University of Kerala, Karavatam campus. So my question is, how can a state balance borrowing with long-term development goals?
And that's a general question. And the young man from, yeah, and then we'll come to Professor Harilal and Professor Kana. No? Okay, all right.
My name is Saria Bin Yasin. I am also a first year PG student in MA Economics and Finance from Karyotam campus. എനിക്കിവിടെ ഒരു കൺസേൺ ആണ് മുന്നോട്ട് വെക്കാനുള്ളത്. അതായത് നമ്മളിപ്പോൾ ഈ ഒരു ബഡ്ജറ്റ് നമ്മൾ പ്രധാനമായിക്കൊണ്ട് പറഞ്ഞ കാര്യമാണ് കേരളത്തിന്റെ ബഡ്ജറ്റിങ്ങിൽ റവന്യൂവിൽ നമ്മൾ ഫേസ് ചെയ്യുന്ന കൺസ്ട്രെയിൻസും അതേപോലെ നമ്മൾ മുന്നോട്ട് വെക്കുന്ന എക്സ്പെൻഡിച്ചേഴ്സും ഒക്കെ ആണ് നമ്മൾ പ്രധാനമായിട്ട് ഡിസ്കസ് ചെയ്തത്. അപ്പൊ അതിൽ നമ്മൾ പറഞ്ഞൊരു കാര്യം ഇപ്പം സിദ്ദിഖ് സാറിന്റെ ഒരു പ്രസന്റേഷനിൽ നമ്മൾ പ്രധാനമായിട്ടും 3 സെക്ടേഴ്സിൽ എക്സ്പെൻഡിച്ചേഴ്സ് നമുക്ക് വളരെ വലിയ രീതിയിൽ കൊണ്ടുവരാൻ സാധിച്ചു. അത് എസ്പെഷ്യലി നമ്മളുടെ ഒരു ക്വാളിറ്റിനെസ്സിനെയാണ് എന്ത് ചെയ്യുന്നത് മുന്നോട്ട് ഇംപ്രൂവ് ചെയ്യുന്നതെന്നും പറഞ്ഞു. അപ്പം നമ്മൾ മുന്നോട്ട് വെക്കുന്ന ഈ എക്സ്പെൻഡിച്ചേഴ്സ്, കാരണം നമുക്ക് ഓൾറെഡി ലിമിറ്റഡ് ആയിട്ടുള്ള ഒരു റവന്യൂ കാര്യങ്ങളാണ് ഉണ്ടെങ്കിൽ തന്നെ നമ്മൾ മുന്നോട്ട് വെക്കുന്ന ഈ എക്സ്പെൻഡിച്ചേഴ്സ് എത്രമാത്രം അതിന്റെ ഒരു മാക്സിമം ലെവലിലേക്ക് യൂട്ടിലൈസ് ചെയ്യാൻ പറ്റി എന്ന കാര്യം നമ്മൾ കൺസേൺ ആവേണ്ടതല്ലേ. അതായത് ഞാനത് 2 കാര്യങ്ങളാണ് അവിടെ ബേസ് ആയിക്കൊണ്ട് വെക്കുന്നത്. ഫസ്റ്റ് കാര്യം ഒരു പേഴ്സണൽ എക്സ്പീരിയൻസ് ആണ്. എൻ്റെ ബ്രദർ എന്ന് പറയുന്ന ഒരു ബയോമെഡിക്കൽ എഞ്ചിനീയർ ആണ്. അദ്ദേഹം കഴിഞ്ഞ 2 വർഷം കേരള ഗവൺമെന്റ് ഹോസ്പിറ്റൽസിന്റെ ബേസിൽ ഒരു പ്രൈവറ്റ് കോൺട്രാക്റ്റിൽ വർക്ക് ചെയ്യാൻ പോയതാ. അപ്പോൾ അവൻ make it short. So he's saying that when he is going to each and every hospital, the one thing he is facing that each and every high equipments that he is using is being as a wastage over there. അതായത് വളരെ വാല്യൂ ആയിട്ടുള്ള പല എക്യുപ്മെന്റ്സ് പല രീതിയിൽ ഒരു വേസ്റ്റേജ് ആയിക്കൊണ്ടാണ് ഗവൺമെന്റ് ഹോസ്പിറ്റൽസിലും കാര്യങ്ങളിലും ഒക്കെ എന്ത് ചെയ്യുന്നത് അവിടെ വന്നു പോകുന്നത് എന്ത് ചെയ്യുന്നുണ്ട് ഒരു പ്രത്യേക ഒരു കൺസേൺ. അപ്പൊ നമ്മൾ ഹെൽത്ത് സെക്ടറിൽ വളരെയധികം എക്സ്പെൻഡിച്ചർ ചെയ്യുന്നുണ്ട്. പക്ഷെ ആ എക്സ്പെൻഡിച്ചർ ഒക്കെ എത്രമാത്രം യൂട്ടിലൈസ് ചെയ്യപ്പെട്ടു എന്ന് നമ്മൾ ചിന്തിക്കേണ്ടതുണ്ട്. അതേപോലെ തന്നെ നമ്മുടെ ഫസ്റ്റ് സെക്ഷനിൽ സർ ഉമ്മൻ സാർ പറഞ്ഞൊരു കാര്യമാണ് കറപ്ഷൻ എന്നത് ഇല്ല എന്നത്. കറപ്ഷൻ എന്നത് എന്തുണ്ട് ഉണ്ട്, പക്ഷെ നമ്മൾ അത് ഇല്ല എന്ന രീതിയിൽ നടിച്ചുകൊണ്ടാണ് എന്ത് ചെയ്യുന്നത് ഓരോ കാര്യങ്ങളും മുന്നോട്ട് വെക്കുന്നത്. അപ്പം അതൊരു കൺസേൺ അല്ല. ഈ ഒരു കറപ്ഷൻസും അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഈ ഒരു വേസ്റ്റേജും കാര്യങ്ങളും നമ്മളിവിടെ എങ്ങനെയാണ് നമുക്കതിനെ കണ്ടെത്താൻ സാധിക്കുക, എങ്ങനെയാണ് അതിനെ ടാക്കിൾ ചെയ്യാൻ സാധിക്കുക എന്നതാണ് എനിക്കൊരു കൺസേൺ ആയിട്ടുള്ളത്. അപ്പൊ ആ ഒരു സ്റ്റേറ്റ്മെന്റും കൂടി ഇതിന്റെ കൂട്ടത്തിൽ വെക്കാൻ ഞാൻ ആഗ്രഹിക്കുന്നു.
Thank you. A very, very valid question. And shall we close the questions? Therefore, Harila, please.
I would like to get the response of Professor Pinaki Chakravarti on a recent development about which, in fact, I don't know much. It was stated that the government has withdrawn, central government has withdrawn tax on YouTube, Google, and such major operators in the market. Now, this is an internal tax, and it is not part of any international discussions, because now international discussions on trade and all, they are about border measures, tariff, non-tariff measures and all. But this particular instance is related to internal measure, internal taxes, which is not normally debated globally. Now, the question is, such things are happening. One by one, we are foregoing revenue opportunities. And many of our countries, like India and other developing countries, the tax GDP ratios are very low. Even the general government, if you take, tax GDP ratios are generally low. And then, if that is true, it will have implications for fiscal deficit. It will have implications for debt sustainability, etc., etc. So you have a system where you have forgone all revenue opportunities because of this pressure or that pressure. And then, having forgone all those revenue opportunities, you are struggling with debt, you are struggling with fiscal deficit. So in fact, no, I would like you to say something more on the possibility of increasing revenue at the national level and probably at the state level also.
Thank you, Dr. Harila. So let's start with, we don't have much time because the original deadline was 3:45. No. You only told me that we have to close the shop at 3:45, and he's changing his word because, and I'm very grateful that you didn't raise any question to him, because that would have been the setting for another fiery speech. So where we are, and let me request from the other end, Ranjit, and then Siddiq, and then Pinaki. That's it.
Yeah, I have few responses to the questions. I think Professor Pinaki Chakravarti can add because he is a well experienced person in this area. So the first question is actually on the so international comparison. So international comparison, actually, the fiscal federal framework if you take the country-wise data, the fiscal federal framework, we cannot strictly comparable with Indian case. India, you have a different constitution, the provisions, everything is different, but still we have, again, one of our student is working on this area, international experience, national, federal country experiences to draw the whether the threshold is possible at the subnational level in this. So, but according to my understanding, there is no threshold level analysis at the subnational level, but still central level, there are studies. They with 60% just the target, that is sustainable portion, all these things. But subnational level, actually, we are actually trying to extend this for the federal countries, 12 federal countries, including Germany and US. We are having some work on that. And regarding the Shruti's question, yes, actually, off-budget liabilities in general, I mean, we have done the analysis at the state level, taking all the states together. But KIFBI picture is a recent thing, as you all know that in general, off-budget liabilities, including center, is not keeping into any of the analysis. They are treating it separately. Still, center's off-budget thing is outside the budget. Recently, state has added. Center has already made the restrictions to put your KIFBI thing into the picture. Yes, our future analysis definitely will consider KIFBI also like other states. That's what it is, not an individual. And for the long period data, this off-budget liability data is not available. Yes, we will try to explore the possibility of including off-budget liability data if we get a comparable data, at least for sufficient time period. Thank you. One more thing, sir. I think with quick questions, priorities or sustainability. If you are targeting priorities now, not considering sustainability, then we have to reorient priorities in the future. That is the framework we have. We can explain. We can discuss on more on that, and I'll leave to.
Yeah, I have a specific question to me. So it is on SEST spending. Actually, we have a long spending history. I have almost 30 years of data. I only showed only 10 years, last 10 years, but I've analyzed last 40 to 40 years data on all this aspect. But that in the over the last 40 years, we do have actually spent consistent spending. But the but it is low. No. I'll come to. Yes, that's what. In the last period, which I have shown, that is 10 years, Andhra Pradesh and Telangana had a special spending, which has actually happened in the last 6 years, basically. 6 years, they are increasing their spending. But Kerala and Tamil Nadu as well as Karnataka, they are consistently keeping their old position. So technically speaking, they are not actually gone down from their spending. What they have done, they kept their spending consistent. But other states, in fact, increase their per capita spending on of various other reasons. Relatively, there. Yeah.
We also ensure that the expenditure met by the local governments are included, because 30% of the plan is devolved to the local government. Yes. And when you take the ratios of state government, sometimes the spending through the local governments will not be included. And in Kerala, a significant proportion of social welfare expenditure is done through the local governments. And this subplans, SC and SC subplan, a higher proportion is spent through the local governments, not the state government department.
Okay, but the question was also not that. The question was about whether this low thing is shown because of saturation.
It is a long over a long period they are spending a consistent amount per capita. That's it. So probably you can say that interpretation can go in different directions. Yeah.
Thank you. And finally, no. Yeah. Joseph will have the last word.
Our per capita actually is lower than Telangana and Andhra Pradesh for the last 10 years. That's it. That you have to accept. You can't say I spent it 10 years ago, a little more. So the numbers speak much better. Shall I?
Yeah. Okay. I'll start with the question raised by Ashrathi on making adaptation expenditure viable, right? So when it comes to capital expenditure, it's not that all capital expenditures are self-liquidating in nature. That's the nature of government expenditure. So If we build a road and if it's a public road and there is no toll in that, so we are not expecting that it's going to directly give us return in terms of revenues earning, right? So from that point of view, giving an additional borrowing power to the state to do, green investment or to deal with climate change, meaning more adaptation expenditure so that we don't have to spend a lot on loss and damage and mitigation as we move. I think is something that is doable, and it can always be over and above the FRBM target. We needn't too much worry about uh, the return in financial terms. So that is one, and it is also a global public good. So ultimately, it has to be financed by taxes. So it's only we are deferring the tax liability. That is one. Somebody has raised this question about conditional and borrowing and conditional transfers. I think these are two different issues. Conditional transfers are given if there is some expenditure that in a federal setup, the national government thinks it is important to be done at the national level, and for that, some states get conditional grants. CSS is that kind of a grant. But in terms of conditional borrowing, issue becomes more complicated. I think the issue of conditional borrowing is the issue is related to macro stabilization. So since stabilization is a central function, central government would always like to ensure that subnational governments borrow less, because that otherwise it can have an impact on the macro stability. And Constitution of India also says that without the permission of the center, states cannot borrow. So it's more complicated issue, but conditional grant is very simple. So center wants certain expenditure to be done, they give conditional grants. So now, on the issue of, and somebody raised a very important question about deficit stock. Deficit is a flow and debt is a stock, and why do we make a stock variable? GDP is a flow variable, and then we say debt GDP ratio is high or low. It doesn't make sense. Yes, in a technical sense, that is correct, but the fact of the matter is we should ideally look at asset to liability ratio. Now, what is the asset value of this auditorium? We do not know, right? And even if we know it, it is not a financial asset. So in order, because we don't generate revenue out of this asset. So a lot of public assets are in that sense not monetizable, and we should not be monetizing them. So that way, the most important and prudent approximation of your liability is considered as a debt to GDP, because GDP is supposed to give you an idea about your tax base. But I think it will be better to look at revenue to debt ratio, because and I am tried doing that, but that hasn't taken off. So revenue to debt ratio will give something which is measurable, because how much revenue you earn and response to that, how much debt you have. So there's something more work needs to be done, but that's a very important question, I think. Yeah, thank you. Oh, no, the question of debt to the tax, sorry. Yeah, I have not looked at this Google tax issues in detail, but on the tax to GDP ratio, I have a slightly different view. I think given our per capita income, if we look at internationally, I'm talking all revenues. I'm talking about tax as well as non-tax revenue. And together we are above 20% of GDP. That's not a very small number. The average 167 countries data that IMF gives has a 10% average. So India is almost double of that. Plus states. Plus states. No, it's tax. If you take non-tax revenue also, it's around 21% of GDP, 20 to 21% of GDP. So it's not, I'm not talking about disinvestment and all, and that's not received. So, but does it mean that it's optimal? Certainly not. I think there is huge scope for increasing taxes. I think three taxes where we can get huge amount of revenue. I would think that simplification of GST can itself give us another 1% of revenue extra. Other thing we don't actually tap but has huge potential. I think Kerala is an exception. Karnataka is an exception. I think property tax. I think the ratio is abysmally low. If we look at countries like South Africa, Brazil, I think that the property tax ratio is around 1.52% of GDP, and it's around 0.2% of GDP in India. So I would think these two taxes can give us around 2 to 2.5% of GDP, which is not happening.
Incidentally, a recent study by World Bank on South Asia said that India's tax GDP ratio is at least lower by at least 7%, they said. I mean, we need not agree with them. That's a different issue. I think I wanted to ask my friend from, where are you from? You wanted to ask the borrowing and long-term development question. Which country are you from? Nigeria. Well, yeah, I think we are all in the same boat. I think this is where we need to. I think we in the developing world, we need to think about our own public finance. If you Google search a developing country oriented public finance, I don't get anything. But if you look at developing country oriented macroeconomics, there is quite a lot of work is being happening. That is precisely why I asked, if for a developing country, what is needed is not fiscal responsibility and budget management. Instead, fiscal responsibility and borrowing utilization act. That's the point. We are not thinking. Wait, I'm put this whole thing into a common individual case. Suppose I had a borrowing restriction when I was a like assistant professor in CDS. I would have been still living in CDS quarters. I could borrow at that time. I could buy land. I could build house. And today, this is very simple. When you are a less developed, you have to allow borrowing. But what are you borrowing for? That's the point. That we are not looking at. And this today in the world of AI, you can actually monitor each and every paisa spent by the the state government concerned. So you can actually monitor that. That is what you should be doing. And I think this is, I mean, I'm sure that there are a lot of questions still remaining in your head. If all the questions are solved, then we are dead. So let us go for coffee. Sorry.
So thank you, all of you, and for the wonderful speakers for making it a very lively, interesting session. We learned a great deal from each other. Thank you all. Thank you very much.
Okay, sir. Very nice.
Tea. After the 5 minutes, we kindly reassemble the auditorium.
5 minutes? When it's supposed to?
Plan on climate change, biodiversity strategy, carbon neutral Kerala 2050 initiative, and innovations like the solar ferry and Kochi water metro. This strong policy and budgetary focus reflect Kerala's unique model of climate control. RS15. Kerala has consistently led the Sustainable Development Goals, SDG Index, with a score of 7. The state has made sustainability a central pillar of development. Through the Kerala State Action Plan on Climate Change, biodiversity strategy, carbon neutral Kerala 2050 initiative, and innovations like the solar ferry and Kochi water metro. This strong policy and budgetary focus reflect Kerala's unique conscious development. Disaster preparedness is a critical concern for Kerala. In 2021-22, the government responded to post-disaster need assessment (PDNA) recommendations with the REO's 50 crore allocation as part of a RE 500 crore flood resilience project. Subsequent years saw allocations for flood control in Alappuzha, the second Kutanad development package, and an R750 crore rehabilitation plan in 2025-26 for landslide-hit regions like Mundakai and Churumala. A major leap is Kawacham, Kerala Warnings Crisis and Hazards Management System, Kerala's crisis forecasting system, a hallmark of the state's proactive disaster governance. Kerala's budgets strongly support clean energy. In 2022-23, over R150 crore was allocated with highlights like solar microgrids for tribal areas, solar pushcarts for vendors, and solar wind hybrids for fishing boats. The 3 MW demo project and a 25 kilowatt hydrokinetic turbine reflect technological innovation. Green hydrogen hubs in Kochi and Thiruvananthapuram saw allocations of Rs 200 crore, while Rs 32 crore went to supporting household-level non-conventional energy. The budget also supports EV development, and battery energy storage will add $500 million by 2026. These initiatives reduce dependency on fossil fuels and advance Kerala's climate goals. Human-wildlife conflict, especially in forest fringe areas, is a rising concern. To tackle this, the 2022-23 budget allocated Rs 25 crore, including Rs 7 crore as compensation to affected individuals. In 2023-24, Rs 85 crore was budgeted, Rs 30.85 crore of which was directed towards strengthening rapid response teams and enhancing compensation. Kerala's budgetary commitment to biodiversity is evident. In 2022-23, Rs 281.31 crore was earmarked, a significant rise from the previous year. Rs 10 crore was used to develop ecotourism infrastructure. The 2025-26 budget included Rs 5 crore to establish a biological park in Kozhikode and proposed an eco-friendly ropeway at Ponmudi. Clean water access is central to Kerala's development agenda. In 2023-24, Rs 10 crore was allocated for rainwater harvesting and groundwater recharge under the Jalanidhi scheme. A substantial Rs 907.10 crore in 2024-25 was dedicated to drinking water and sewage treatment projects. Additionally, the state committed Rs 550 crore as its 25% share in the Jal Jeevan mission. In 2022-23, Kerala launched targeted environmental initiatives like allocating Rs 10 crore to expand the Suchithwa Sagaram scheme to clear plastic from water bodies. An equal amount went to R&D on natural material reuse for construction, like coir, bamboo, and husk. The state also initiated an environment budget from 2023-24 to track green expenditures. Kerala's coastal areas, vulnerable to erosion and climate impacts, received dedicated attention. Rs 1500 crore was allocated in 2021-22 for Phase 1 of the Coastal Conservation Strategy. Targeting fragile lands 40 to 75 meters from the sea, the project uses technologies like tetrapods, diaphragm walls, geotubes, and mangroves. The initiative spans 1,050 kilometers and is supported by KIIFB. It involves research institutions and local communities and aims for completion in 4 years, with a total estimated cost of Rs 5,300 crore. Kerala's post-COVID approach to environment and sustainability is not just about recovery, but about redefining growth for a climate-conscious future. But alongside this progress lie critical challenges. 1. How can Kerala overcome implementation delays and ensure integrated delivery of its climate and sustainability programs? 2. How can we enhance grassroots adoption and public engagement, especially in energy transitions and circular economy initiatives? 3. How can Kerala strengthen impact monitoring and evaluation, M&E, of climate-related programs? 4. What inclusive frameworks can ensure that development remains both equitable and sustainable? These are not questions with easy answers. They call for deliberation, and today, we are privileged to have a galaxy of experts among us. Let us listen to them, reflect, and explore the way forward. There is reason to take pride, but also reason to ask, how can we do better? Kerala has consistently led the Sustainable Development Goals, SDG Index, with a score of 79/100 in 2023, 24, and ranked second in the State Energy Efficiency Index. Post-COVID, the state has made sustainability a central pillar of development. Through the Kerala State Action Plan on Climate Change, Biodiversity Strategy, Carbon Neutral Kerala 2050 Initiative, and innovations like the Solar Ferry and Kochi Water Metro. This strong policy and budgetary focus reflect Kerala's unique model of climate-conscious development. Disaster preparedness is a critical concern for Kerala. In 2021-22, the government responded to post-disaster need assessment (PDNA) recommendations with a Rs 50 crore allocation as part of a Rs 500 crore flood resilience project. Subsequent years saw allocations for flood control in Alappuzha, the second Kutanad development package, and a Rs 750 crore rehabilitation plan in 2025-26 for landslide-hit regions like Mundakai and Churumala. A major leap is Kawacham, Kerala Warnings Crisis and Hazards Management System, Kerala's Crisis Forecasting System, a hallmark of the state's proactive disaster governance. Kerala's budgets strongly support clean energy. In 2022-23, over Rs 150 crore was allocated with highlights like solar microgrids for tribal areas, solar pushcarts for vendors, and solar wind hybrids for fishing boats. The 3 MW demo project and a 25 kilowatt hydrokinetic turbine reflect technological innovation. Green hydrogen hubs in Kochi and Thiruvananthapuram saw allocations of Rs 200 crore, while Rs 32 crore went to supporting household-level non-conventional energy. The budget also supports EV development, and battery energy storage will add $500 million by 2026. These initiatives reduce dependency on fossil fuels and advance Kerala's climate goals. Human-wildlife conflict, especially in forest fringe areas, is a rising concern. To tackle this, the 2022-23 budget allocated Rs 25 crore, including Rs 7 crore as compensation to affected individuals. In 2023-24, Rs 85 crore was budgeted, Rs 30.85 crore of which was directed towards strengthening rapid response teams and enhancing compensation. Kerala's budgetary commitment to biodiversity is evident. In 2022-23, Rs 281.31 crore was earmarked, a significant rise from the previous year. Rs 10 crore was used to develop ecotourism infrastructure. The 2025-26 budget included Rs 5 crore to establish a biological park in Kozhikode and proposed an eco-friendly ropeway at Ponmudi. Clean water access is central to Kerala's development agenda. In 2023-24, Rs 10 crore was allocated for rainwater harvesting and groundwater recharge under the Jalanidhi scheme. A substantial Rs 907.10 crore in 2024-25 was dedicated to drinking water and sewage treatment projects. Additionally, the state committed Rs 550 crore as its 25% share in the Jal Jeevan mission. In 2022-23, Kerala launched targeted environmental initiatives like allocating Rs 10 crore to expand the Suchithwa Sagaram scheme to clear plastic from water bodies. An equal amount went to R&D on natural material reuse for construction, like coir, bamboo, and husk. The state also initiated an environment budget from 2023-24 to track green expenditures. Kerala's coastal areas, vulnerable to erosion and climate impacts, received dedicated attention. Rs 500 crore was allocated in 2021-22 for Phase 1 of the Coastal Conservation Strategy. Targeting fragile lands 40-75 meters from the sea, the project uses technologies like tetrapods, diaphragm walls, geotubes, and mangroves. The initiative spans 1,050 kilometers and is supported by KIIFB. It involves research institutions and local communities and aims for completion in 4 years, with a total estimated cost of Rs 5,300 crore. Kerala's post-COVID approach to environment and sustainability is not just about recovery, but about redefining growth for a climate-conscious future. But alongside this progress lie critical challenges. 1. How can Kerala overcome implementation delays and ensure integrated delivery of its climate and sustainability programs? 2. How can we enhance grassroots adoption and public engagement, especially in energy transitions and circular economy initiatives? 3. How can Kerala strengthen impact monitoring and evaluation, M&E, of climate-related programs? 4. What inclusive frameworks can ensure that development remains both equitable and sustainable? These are not questions with easy answers. They call for deliberation, and today, we are privileged to have a galaxy of experts among us. Let us listen to them, reflect, and explore the way forward. There is reason to take pride, but also reason to ask, how can we do better? Kerala has consistently led the Sustainable Development Goals, SDG Index, with a score of 79/100 in 2023, 24, and ranked second in the State Energy Efficiency Index. Post-COVID, the state has made sustainability a central pillar of development. Through the Kerala State Action Plan on Climate Change, Biodiversity Strategy, Carbon Neutral Kerala 2050 Initiative, and innovations like the Solar Ferry and Kochi Water Metro. This strong policy and budgetary focus reflect Kerala's unique model of climate-conscious development. Disaster preparedness is a critical concern for Kerala. In 2021-22, the government responded to post-disaster need assessment (PDNA) recommendations with a Rs 50 crore allocation as part of a Rs 500 crore flood resilience project. Subsequent years saw allocations for flood control in Alappuzha, the second Kutanad development package, and a Rs 750 crore rehabilitation plan in 2025-26 for landslide-hit regions like Mundakai and Churumala. A major leap is Kawacham, Kerala Warnings Crisis and Hazards Management System, Kerala's crisis forecasting system, a hallmark of the state's proactive disaster governance. Kerala's budgets strongly support clean energy. In 2022-23, over Rs 150 crore was allocated with highlights like solar microgrids for tribal areas, solar pushcarts for vendors, and solar wind hybrids for fishing boats. The 3 MW demo project and a 25 kilowatt hydrokinetic turbine reflect technological innovation. Green hydrogen hubs in Kochi and Thiruvananthapuram saw allocations of Rs 200 crore, while Rs 32 crore went to supporting household-level non-conventional energy. The budget also supports EV development, and battery energy storage will add $500 million by 2026. These initiatives reduce dependency on fossil fuels and advance Kerala's climate goals. Human-wildlife conflict, especially in forest fringe areas, is a rising concern. To tackle this, the 2022-23 budget allocated Rs 25 crore, including Rs 7 crore as compensation to affected individuals. In 2023-24, Rs 85 crore was budgeted, Rs 30.85 crore of which was directed towards strengthening rapid response teams and enhancing compensation. Kerala's budgetary commitment to biodiversity is evident. In 2022-23, Rs 281.31 crore was earmarked, a significant rise from the previous year. Rs 10 crore was used to develop ecotourism infrastructure. The 2025-26 budget included Rs 5 crore to establish a biological park in Kozhikode and proposed an eco-friendly ropeway at Ponmudi. Clean water access is central to Kerala's development agenda. In 2023-24, Rs 10 crore was allocated for rainwater harvesting and groundwater recharge under the Jalanidhi scheme. A substantial Rs 907.10 crore in 2024-25 was dedicated to drinking water and sewage treatment projects. Additionally, the state committed Rs 550 crore as its 25% share in the Jal Jeevan mission. In 2022-23, Kerala launched targeted environmental initiatives like allocating Rs 10 crore to expand the Suchithwa Sagaram scheme to clear plastic from water bodies. An equal amount went to R&D on natural material reuse for construction, like coir, bamboo, and husk. The state also initiated an environment budget from 2023-24 to track green expenditures. Kerala's coastal areas, vulnerable to erosion and climate impacts, received dedicated attention. Rs 500 crore was allocated in 2021-22 for Phase 1 of the Coastal Conservation Strategy. Targeting fragile lands 40 to 75 meters from the sea, the project uses technologies like tetrapods, diaphragm walls, geotubes, and mangroves. The initiative spans 1,050 kilometers and is supported by